If you find yourself judging others and feeling like you need to compete with others, then you still have inner child work to do. Hey guys, my name is Rebecca. I'm an extraterrestrial contactee, a galactic channeler, a psychic medium, and I work in the Akashic Records. This video I'm making as almost like a part 2 to the first video that I just posted today on conflict within the spiritual community. And I was thinking after I posted about the ego and how I didn't talk enough about how we can work with the ego and support the ego in healthy, productive ways. So this also, I think, is going to line up with some of your questions that you have had recently about shadow work. And so, simply put, shadow work is simply healing work. That's all that it is. It's the spiritual community term for healing. And so, if you have awakened to the truth about who you really are, which is a spiritual being having a physical experience, one of many, then you have likely begun down a healing path. And ultimately what that is just us trying to be better humans. How can we be better humans? How can we work through all of the density, the shadow, the trauma? Really, they are the same thing. For me, I have done a ton of inner child work, and regardless of what anybody on the planet says, I am absolutely convinced that each and every one of us have an inner wounded child. And it's not necessarily because we grew up in an unhealthy, dysfunctional household. It is because we grew up in an unhealthy, dysfunctional planet. And we were raised by society, most of us, unless, we were living under a rock somewhere, which happens. Not obviously under a rock, but you guys know what I mean. So the way that I look at this is there are two versions of me that exist within me that are running the show. It is either the version of me that loves myself and holds space and compassion for myself, and then there is the critical version of me, the version of me that is always trying to keep me in line. Do this, do that, be more, be less, you're too much, you're not enough. Constantly, it's that voice in my head trying to keep me in line, and living under the reign of that voice is absolutely exhausting. Living under the leadership of the version of me that loves myself, that holds space and compassion for myself, is freeing. There is a freedom in that version of me, the version of me that is supporting myself, loving myself through my perceived mistakes. And so at any given moment, identifying within you who is running the show right now, who is driving the car. Is it the loving version of me or the critical version of me? When we meet the critical versions of ourselves, we try not to meet them. My suggestion is to try not to meet them with resistance. I don't want you here, get out of here, and resisting. Instead, meet that version of yourself with compassion, because that version of yourself wouldn't exist unless you felt unsafe and needed to protect yourself in some way. Usually it's a result of, or a creation of, that stems from your wounded inner child that needs to be kept in a place that they perceive as safe and secure. And when I'm quiet, when I keep myself in the corner, when I keep myself in check, when I act the way I think you want me to act and do the things I think you want me to do, I am safe. This is why so many of us are not standing in our authentic selves, because it doesn't feel safe to do that. I am giving you permission to do that. step into that version of yourself. Your galactic families are giving you permission to do that. Step into the version of yourself that is free from that voice. Tell that critical voice, I love you for trying to keep me safe, but you are no longer supporting the version of me that I am, the version of me that I am becoming. And so with love, I am asking you to step aside and bring in that loving version of yourself. Imagine that you always have this little version of you, this 3 or 4-year-old, or maybe even younger version of you living inside yourself that is constantly afraid to be who they are. How would you treat that little version of you? You would meet that little child with love, with compassion, with patience, with care, with empathy. Why aren't you doing that for yourself? And when we get back to the original message, circling back to the ego is that critical voice. It is that version of yourself that doesn't feel safe. And so this is why it got me thinking when I was making the video about conflict within the spiritual community. You know, and people are posting online going, this psychic is wrong and this psychic is wrong, and you know, this channeled message is wrong. And this didn't have anything to do with anyone saying anything about me, guys. That's not what fueled this. It's me watching others attack others that it affects me. It's painful to watch us that we're supposed to be on the same team. When I see someone in anger like that, judging, I see a really wounded person, and I have so much compassion for them, and energetically I am holding them in that compassion vibration. I'm holding space for them because at some point in their life that space was not held for them by their family, their parents, their friends, whoever it is. There is no doubt in my mind when someone is defending themselves, what they are really doing is trying to keep themselves safe. And we don't articulate it like that on the conscious level, but that's what I see, because that was me. My ego was, 5 years ago, my ego was the size of the planet. And it's because I experienced so much trauma in my life, and trauma that I carried forward into this life from past lives and from my ancestors and my galactic family, that, you know, the bigger the ego, the deeper the wounding. And so we can have a big personality, and we can stand up for ourselves, and we can have conviction behind the things that we are saying, but we don't have to be loud to be heard, and we don't have to be heard to be okay. And so I really hope and I trust that this message will find those who need to hear it, because at one point in my journey I needed to hear it, so that, and you know, it's painful. There's a visceral, painful feeling when the ego is attacked, you know, and really what that is just a trigger for wounding that I still need to heal within myself, shadow work that I still need to work through. So the hardest thing in this whole healing journey for me, the most painful, has been to be able to take the ego hits with as much grace as I can. And I will tell you today, the things that bothered me even a year ago, they just don't bother me today, because I'm standing in the authentic version of myself as much as I possibly can at this moment. And I have the loving version of myself driving the car, running the show. Every time that critical version of me steps in, I acknowledge it, I validate it, I tell it that I understand why it's there. It was there to keep me safe, to keep me secure, but it's not serving me anymore. And I I shift out of that and into the loving version of myself? So, guys, we have to, people talk about ego death. I don't really know if there's a healthy amount of ego. I think that the ego that I am talking about is this nasty, abrasive density that comes up that I don't like about myself. It's not who I want to be. It's not how I want to show up. So if that's you, this is probably the type of work that you need to look at doing, is where am I showing up in fear? Where am I showing up in anger, and what needs to be shifted within me? Is it that critical voice that needs to be shifted out, and that loving version of me that needs to be shifted in? I love each and every one of you so much. I will see you all soon. Happy Ascension.